SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. Muggy weather today. Expecting a whole bunch of snow out there, but nope, ain't happening. So we're on with life and playing with a lot of weird schedules today. I'm sure everybody getting off early yesterday, but no reason to. Anyway, I was glad I used the time. All right, let's get on with it. Today we're going to be speaking with some folks we know from before. They're doing a study of Native American pain risk. Are we more susceptible to pain than any other people? We'll We'll speak with some folks from a project to look at that. And in the second portion of our program, we have folks at the Sundance Film Festival out in Utah who are looking at one called Bad Press that looks at the story of our battle for freedom of the press for the Mvskoke Creek Nation. But let's get on with things here. Okay. All right. Are you all with us here this morning?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, welcome back. I know we had spoken, what's it, a year ago or so, something like that?
Yeah, we've actually spoken 2 times before.
Okay, right. Now, well, we've got you back, seeing how things are progressing. The main question, why are Native Americans at greater risk for chronic pain? So after a couple of years of working on it, a couple of chances to talk with our people, what is the answer to that question?
I'll just kind of take a step back. So, chronic pain is having pain on most days or every day for the past 3 to 6 months. And high-impact chronic pain is when that pain starts limiting your life, your work life. And we know that it not only impacts you individually, but it impacts social and family lives as well. It also costs the nation about $600 billion annually, chronic pain, through things like medical treatments, disability payments, loss of productivity, and things like that. And what some people might not know, Gary, is that Native Americans have the highest prevalence of back, neck, face, and jaw pain. And there weren't very many people any people trying to understand the mechanisms that might contribute to that. And so Jamie and I started this work in 2009 to try to figure it out. And we really found that greater exposure discrimination and other psychological stress contributed to those high rates of chronic pain within the Native Americans, or chronic pain risk, I should say.
Well, that's an interesting premise there. I presume you've got something to back it up, but that's that question. You mentioned a social problem. No, I don't know if it's social problems, but the word prejudice and discrimination comes to mind there. Is that related then to why my lower back pain is there, or something else?
Yeah, let me jump in, Gary. So first of all, thanks for having us back. It's always a delight to talk with you and to share what we've found. So in this original study, we started doing this work back around 2010. We got our first large National Institutes of Health grant, and it started in 2013, and that went for 5 years, and we wrapped that up in 2019. And so that's the largest study that's ever been conducted to try to understand, why these rates of chronic pain are so high within the Native American community. So what we did is we invited participants to come into the lab, and we asked them to come on a couple of different days, did a lot of different tests to sort of understand how the body responds to pain, both subjectively and physiologically. We asked a lot of questions about personal experiences, including experiences of stress, but all kinds of different experiences, including, normal health behaviors like exercise and things like that, blood pressure, history of illnesses. And what we ultimately found, and it's important to say, so these were all healthy pain-free participants when they started our study. And them to just say, hey, how you doing? And assessed whether or not they went on to develop symptoms of chronic pain, which, as Joanna mentioned, is pain on most days, pain of about a 3 out of a 10 on a 10-point scale, and it needs to last at least 3 months. And what we found, to our shock, really, but it's consistent with the national prevalence rates, is that the Native American sample, so the folks that were Native American in our sample, went on to develop chronic pain at almost 3 times the rate of the non-Hispanic white folks in our sample. So that was alarming to us, but it's consistent with what we find at the prevalence rate. So Joanna mentioned some very specific chronic pain conditions that are a higher prevalence rate, but it's alarming to know that 1 in 3 Native Americans report experiencing chronic pain, and 1 in 7 report that high-impact chronic pain that Joanna mentioned that impacts daily, essentially it causes some sort of disability on most days. So what we did is we determined who in our sample went on to develop chronic pain within a 2-year period. So we're not talking about, decades later. We're talking about within a 2-year period following being healthy while they were in our study. We determined that the Native American sample went on to develop at 3 times the rate. So the question then became, well, could we identify something about what people told us in those 2 days that we, assessed them and tested how they responded to pain? Is there physiological mechanisms that came about during that testing that allowed us to identify who's likely to go on to develop pain later? And as Joanna alluded to, we found that it was indeed these psychosocial stressors, sociological stressors like interpersonal discrimination, being treated unfairly by other people, experiences of trauma, so, being exposed to very, very stressful life events, and then the psychological experiences that then are consequences of that. So actually experiencing daily stress, perceived stress on, a lot of days over the last 60 days. And then there are emotional and thinking-related changes that come along with this as well. So folks who tended to be exposed to discrimination, exposed to trauma, who were experiencing stress, were more likely to have anxiety about pain. So when being exposed to pain or thinking about pain, it caused them a lot of anxiety. It caused them a lot of tension. And in addition to that, it tended to evoke thoughts like, I can't handle this pain. This pain is never going to end. These thoughts that tend to amplify pain. And when these sort of cascading events happen, what then occurred within our body is that it seemed as though the spinal cord, right, so part of our nervous system that runs up and down our spine, amplifies those pain signals whenever being exposed to a painful stimulus. And when that happened, when all of these cascading events occurred together, that's what predicted who went on to develop chronic pain, but it was specific to our Native American sample. So these seem to be, at least from this first study, seem to be some of the precursors that sort of set the stage for promoting pain risk within our Native American colleagues.
That's a lot to absorb at once.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah. I had several ideas flit through my brain there, and trying to keep up with you there. The phrase in your narrative says exposure to environmental racism. Now, when I hear that term, I've worked on that story in the past, and when you hear that environmental racism, I'm thinking of someone building perhaps a waste dump or something near a residential area where people have to deal with that every day. Now, is that accurate? Is that correct? Should that be examined?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for our first study, we really looked at a lot of individual factors that might be contributing to the chronic pain risk. But for the second larger study, we're going to be looking at societal level factors, like you mentioned, Gary, the environmental structural racism. So we're going to be looking at where you grew up, were you exposed to a lot of pollution, waste, other things that we're going to be doing based on kind of some different kind of geocoding, census tracking, in addition to looking at individual factors as well. But yep, you're right. You're exactly right. That's what we're going to be looking at for this next round.
Yeah, you're spot on, Gary. So we really want to know, is it the types of our policies, our actions by governmental agencies that tend to expose Native Americans to, higher risk situations like pollutants, ozone, waste, traffic, noise. And in addition, are there things like, access to healthcare disparities, access to education disparities, income disparities, these societal level factors that sort of might create these stressful situations that then have these cascading effects that I mentioned. So we want to know if there's something even bigger, right? Can we address this at a societal level and identify those factors so that we can start to identify where can we change policies to lessen the burden?
Let me throw another example at you there. In the last couple of years, we had this huge controversy at the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation where they were talking about a petroleum pipeline through their area, and local folks were fearing for the quality of their water and any other pollution. Now, would a situation like that kind of fall under what you're studying there, and what might the symptoms be?
Absolutely. I would say absolutely. So, our bodies, the way our bodies respond to stress, these are evolutionarily old systems, right? So the reason our bodies have these stress systems in place is to help us survive whenever we're in danger. So if we're faced with a lion on the savannah or faced with a mugger in an alleyway, the same bodily systems that are turned on during those periods to help us fight or flee are the same systems that are turned on whenever we're exposed to chronic or repetitive stress. Now, whether that be, impingement on our land or being exposed to policies or racist beliefs that are persistent and chronic, these sorts of, environmental exposures turn on the same stress system that would be turned on, when you're exposed to something dangerous like a lion or a mugger. And as a result of this, this sort of repetitive and or chronic turning on of our stress system, this has negative consequences to our physiology. And what we're finding is that one of those negative consequences might indeed be risk for chronic pain.
Okay. Now, in the process of working with your subjects, folks who come in to be the guinea pigs, what kind of tests do you conduct there to get some gauge on how pain affects them?
Yeah, so before we go to kind of what the participants will be doing, I just also wanted to mention that kind of similar to Standing Rock, if you saw all of the indigenous people and allies coming together to protest that, we're going to be investigating those types of things in this new study. So we're going to be looking at like indigenous resilience, things like cultural connectedness, humor, spirituality, identity that might buffer kind of some of those negative consequences that we might find at the individual level and the societal level. So that's kind of there's like three pieces of the project, looking at individual factors, societal factors, resilience factors. So it's a big project. So participants are going to be coming to the lab 4 different times.
Now, we had one of our former staff members undergo your testing there, and he said, well, if you want to find pain, they certainly found it. He said there are a couple times where he was, really subjected to the focus of your testing there. Now, I'd still like to get back to like what happens to these people when they come in. What kinds of methods, perhaps, would you use on someone?
Sure. So let me jump in, Gary. So there are 4 days, and each day is really designed to assess different things. So day one, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time going over inclusion-exclusion criteria. We're going to do a qualitative structured interview with folks to get a sense of what types of stressful experiences they've had throughout their life, what sorts of experiences of pain they have had throughout their life. We're going to do some minor blood work where we do a finger prick just to get a little drop of blood so that we can look at some of the consequences of experiencing stress on blood-related markers of stress. And then we're going to end with sending folks home with some little vials so that we can collect saliva. And the saliva is important because it allows us to identify stress hormones that are secreted through saliva so that we can look and identify whether or not folks are experiencing more or less of the stress hormone that gets produced from through the saliva. So that's sort of day one. On day two, it's really to understand how the body responds to stress. Now, if you were to go to a cardiologist, probably, and you were saying, hey, doc, I've been having maybe some difficulty with my heart. I want to, check out and see if everything's okay. Well, what that cardiologist might do probably is going to put an EKG on you that's going to measure your heart, going to put you on a treadmill, and then increase that physical demand and stress on the body to see how the heart responds. So we have a very similar task that allows us to look at how the body responds to psychological stress. So what we'll do is they'll come in, there'll be some tasks that get people to kind of really think about stressors, and then we'll be measuring things like blood pressure, heart rate, and this hormone from saliva called cortisol that allows us to see how the body responds to stress. So we're kind of kicking the tires, if you will, to determine how people's stress system is functioning. Day three is actually the rest day. So this day is to come in and just get a sense of, hey, how does the body respond if you're just sitting at rest? So that's an easy day. And then the fourth day is when we're going to actually sort of probe how the pain system works. And as your colleague suggested, yes, indeed, we will be delivering painful stimuli in a very controlled and safe way to see how the nervous system, how the spinal cord, how the brain, and how you subjectively respond to painful events so that we can understand whether or not there are individual differences in how the body responds to these painful events that might then place individuals at risk down the road. And so it's the fourth day that really is where we have a variety of tasks. So there might be things like placing your arm in cold water or putting a blood pressure cuff on your arm and inflating it until it, the pressure starts to cause a dull, achy pain. And then we also have tasks that involve delivering nerve stimulation that will promote, nerve activity that leads to sort of a prickling pain in the ankle. And so through these variety of tasks, it allows us to get, in a very global way, a very big picture about how the pain system is working. But it's very important to understand that everything we do is safe. It's been approved through our ethics board, not only at the University of Tulsa, but at Cherokee Nation and Indian Health Services, Oklahoma City area office. And so these procedures, have been reviewed, and we've been doing these types of things for years in a very safe manner. So even though they might be a little scary to think about, these are things that allow us to really say something about how the body is responding to pain.
Now, how would you separate bodily pain, some from like just growing old, arthritis or something like that? How would you find the difference between what you're talking about and just the physical evolution that our bodies go through?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's true, as we age, the risk for chronic pain goes up, but that's not true of everybody. But the risk of chronic pain goes up. For example, I think the statistics are something like 50% of people over the age of 50 will develop osteoarthritis. So that's pain that comes from wear and tear on the joint. But what's important is that not everybody develops that, right? Just the normal wear and tear. And not everybody develops pain from that. And so that's an individual difference that's very important, that sort of distinguishes who will actually suffer from these kinds of events as we age versus those who seem to really be quite resilient and bounce back from it. And also the other key piece is whether or not it causes disability on a day-to-day basis. Does it impact your ability to do the things that you enjoy, to go to work, to interact with friends and family? And so that disability is another key piece that sort of distinguishes sort of everyday aches and pains from the type of pain that we're talking about, chronic pain.
Now, you've been working on this for what, 2 or 3 years now? Is that accurate?
A little over a
actually-
decade.
Over a decade, okay.
Yeah.
And what kind of information have you gleaned from it? I mean, what are the results so far? What indications are out there that you're working with?
Yeah, so we've published over about 19 peer-reviewed papers in scientific journals that are showing multiple things. But like Jamie had mentioned, and I think I mentioned briefly, we're really finding that those psychosocial stressors are really contributing to the Native American pain risk.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to wrap this up, but if someone was interested in either participating or talking to you about the data that you've derived so far, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we're starting recruitment and really kind of having participants come into the lab in February. And it's important for them to know that they can be reimbursed for up to $425 for their time. They also can receive reimbursement for lodging and miles to Tulsa, depending on how far away they are. We're trying to find 200 healthy and chronic pain-free Native Americans, and they can call the lab. It's 918-631-3565. We also have an email that's utulsa.plan@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Joanna and Jamie. We appreciate you giving us an update, and I presume this study is an ongoing thing there?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Call in.
5 years.
Give them all the information you need.
Okay, great. Then we'll probably keep an eye out for it, and I'll talk to you again about it.
All right.
Thanks so
Sounds
much,
good.
Gary.
Thanks,
All
Gary.
right. Y'all have a good one.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to take a short pause here, and then we're going to listen to a discussion produced by our friend Jared Moore on his Livewire program for Mvskoke Vision about our people talking about a film at the Sundance Film Festival. So stay with us, please, on Mvskoke Radio. Once again, we want to thank our colleague Jared Moore and his work at Mvskoke Vision. He did an interview with some folks who took time to go to the Sundance Film Festival for the competition there and to share one about our battle for journalistic freedom here, freedom of the press. So once again, thank you, Jared.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of Livewire. I am your host, Jared Moore. And on today's program, we have an interview that I've been wanting to do for probably 5 years easy. I've been hounding on Becca to try to get this interview done, and is always putting it off. But what we're going to be talking about today is Bad Press. It's a documentary that's going to premiere at Sundance at the end of this month. And on the program, we have Rebecca Lansbury Baker. She is what is your title at the Native American Journalists Association? I don't want to get it wrong.
Oh, no, you're fine. I'm the executive director at the Native American Journalists Association and one of the co-directors of Bad Press, along with
Yes,
Joe.
along with our other guest, Joe Peeler, and director of Mvskoke Media, Angel Ellis, who is featured prominently in the documentary. So thanks so much for being on the program today, guys.
Oh,
Thanks for having us.
We're absolutely thrilled to be here. Of course, like we're excited to kick off the Sundance experience, but it's so like great to be talking with Muskogee Media and our fellow Muskogee citizens first before all the action really happens. Like you said, it's been a story that's been a long time in the works. So, and it involves you all. So I know that we're connected in so many different ways, and have been with the story and with you all, as friends and people of my community. So I'm just especially thrilled to be chatting with the audiences of Muskogee Media.
Yeah, and that's a disclaimer for the audience too. I am also in the documentary as well as several other people because what Joe or Becca, probably Becca, why don't you tell us what it's about? Like, what time period does it cover, and what happens in the movie? Just generally.
Absolutely. So we started filming, back in 2019. That's when it actually was like, okay, this is a movie. We're going to pursue it, but the story backs up a little bit further than that. So we start following the story of the fight for free press in the Muskogee Creek Nation after it was repealed in 2018. In the midst of an election season. So that's really where our story begins, and, chronicling all the ups and downs of the election season and of, that fight for free press, of which, you are all very much a part of, and making sure that Muskogee Media, has its independence so you can do your jobs. So that's a very short version of it. Joe, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
We're coming up on our 4-year anniversary of starting filming, which is kind of crazy. So we're premiering about a month shy, almost to the day of our 4-year anniversary. And I would just add that it covers about that amount of time. It covers the over 1,000-day fight for free press in Muskogee Nation.
Awesome. So, Joe, I have a question for you too. Maybe we should talk about the title of the movie because it's kind of a provocative title. I love the title, but Bad Press, what is it? Where does it come from, that title?
Well, credit where it's due. My girlfriend Natalie came up with it. She walked in one day when we were trying to figure out a title, and she just went, "Why don't you call it Bad Press?" And I just thought, "But what? This is so good."
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think we were looking for an evocative title. We were looking for a title that might have multiple meanings. I think a lot of our team love a pun title, and this kind of echoes throughout the film in different ways. It kind of comes back up in different ways throughout. Some of the National Council members effectively didn't like bad press coming their way, and claimed so on the night of the repeal. Then in the wake of the repeal, you all were not able to do your jobs, effectively becoming a bad press. So there's kind of multiple layers to it, and I also think at times it has a kind of badass feeling to it. So there's also that edge to it. So I think it's a great title.
Yeah, and it kind of oh, go ahead, Angel.
When I first heard the title, because I had just learned it in December, it made me think of the poem "The Bad Indian." Right. That really resonated with me because I've spent 15 years almost being a journalist, and I think the perception of the outside world right now is that we're all kind of bad or having our own agendas, and I really just kind of embraced that. When I read that title, I was like, yeah, because I'm a bad Indian, and yeah, I'm a bad press too. So that kind of made me kind of just embrace that, you're not here to make friends, you're not here to be this is survival and healing and telling our stories. So that I loved it from the jump.
Yeah, and I want to remind the audience that's watching, if you have a question, pop it into the chat. We'll try to get it answered. Oklahoma Community Watch there in the chat. I see you. If you want to send me an email at jmoore@muscogeemedia.com, we can get hooked up on that Tulsa case, so just go for it. Back to Bad Press. So we've covered the amount of time that it goes that the documentary takes place in. And one of the things I've always been interested in is, Mr. Peeler, how did you get involved in this, production? Because, Becca was there and she was on the first editorial board and Angel was there. But, how did you get pulled into this quagmire,
Well, I'm friends with Garrett, who is married to Becca and is also one of our producers. And Garrett approached me one day and told me what was happening with you guys and kind of said, look, Becca and I think that there's something here. Do you think this is a movie? And I said, absolutely, I do. And Becca particularly has the background in journalism, has the background with Naja, and I and my producing partner, Conrad, who you all met, obviously, have the background in documentary filmmaking. And so I kind of went to Conrad and said, what do you think? I think this sounds, there might be something there, right? It sounds interesting enough to at least kind of poke around and see what's happening. It was something that I did not know anything about. And so that was kind of like the first, not a red flag, but the first kind of flag as a filmmaker is if I have no idea that something is going on, if I had no idea about the struggles of you guys and other tribes related to free press in Indian country, I think that means a lot of people don't know. Right. And so that kind of piqued my curiosity out of the gate. And that was about 2 days before we hopped on a Zoom or a Skype call with Angel. We spoke with Angel and said, hey, you down if I come and film for a weekend? And 2 days later, I was on a plane, and it was a very whirlwind weekend. We filmed with Angel and Evelyn and Angel's Nana, and kind of we filmed a national council meeting and did a bunch of stuff, and kind of came out. And it was really Angel that kind of hooked me. I think I met Angel and thought oh, this is something that we need to pursue. She's clearly very, very, very passionate about this issue and about the Mvskoke citizens. And I think that kind of combination of things, we thought, yeah, we need to form this team and go and film the movie.
Right.
It was super, super Indian of us because Joe got off a plane and I just crashed my grandma's house and we brought out the books and started going through pictures and stuff.
Right.
And it really for me, I was a person who'd sit here being a journalist for a very long time and I'd really never put my advocacy hat on. And so it was kind of a debut. I knew that there was going to be a change in my momentum and how I approached that. And so I sat down and it really meant a lot to me that some people who I didn't even know would hop on a plane and show up that weekend and start showing up and care enough to put those cameras on, because those cameras became my protective shield to do the work that I did. And I needed them very much. And through that whole process, I grew tremendously. And it's been a crazy ride for sure.
Well, that leads me to my question for you that I was going to ask is, what was that like having a documentary crew follow you around for, 2-3 years?
It was a while. At first it was really scary because I didn't know what to think about it. When you would show up to a meeting and there was these cameras and it was getting everyone's attention, I had really operated in that fly in to a place, get your information, go back to your desk and do your job zone. And so I wasn't used to having the camera pointed at me at all. That was a whole new experience for me. And then I had to worry about my language and smoking and I feel like I aired all my dirty laundry to the world, and now I'm kind of nervous about that. So.
Well, it's almost it's as well also almost your literal dirty laundry. You got you got a documentary crew in your house, following you around in your house. I was talking to Braden today in his office, and I was saying, that's the thing for me about the documentary that gives me butterflies is. We work hard to, when we do a live stream or do any news coverage, to put forward, our business self, our professional self as much as we can. And the documentary crew, if you see bad press, you will see what the office is like when we're not live on the camera. You know, like you'll see the staff, like when they're like reacting to things before they've had chance to process them and fact check them. So it's taking off the veil a whole lot for me personally, and then also the same for you, Angel, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, there were times when they were filming us having reactions to very important things that happened. And it was not anything that we had any chance to compose ourselves for or anything. It was live, living color. And basically you see who we really are as people. And I know for me personally, I'd never been tested in that way. And so I had just assumed that this was to get protection for advocacy. Like the whole time, I never assumed that this movie would mean anything to anyone. It was just kind of like the cameras will protect me to do my job. And then to find out that there are people interested, now I'm sitting here like, holy smokes. It really gives you an insight into who you are in some of your most trying times. And overall, I came through it kind of feeling like, wow, when the rubber meets the road, I am a good person and I'm qualified and I'm knowledgeable and I'm, you know, the kind of person who does the right thing even when no one's looking. So it kind of made it easier. But I'm real curious to know what it's like for Becca to be a storyteller and a person who's coming to your own tribe, you know, your own family basically, and telling such a tale, because for a long time this was a contentious topic. It was booted back and forth.
Yeah.
Very politicized.
Well, Becca, if you want to, you know, Angel's going to interview inside the interview. So you,
this is fully what I expected. All of us asking each other questions, which is great. This is a great roundtable format. But yeah, I think a lot of times when we talk about free press, it's so insular and we're, you know, discussing it within the, you know, realm of Indian country with each other, like whether that's, you know, happening at a Naja conference is one of the only places in the world where we're tackling this topic. And there's so much like strong community within that when we like step out a little bit, and, you know, when we were sharing this story with Joe and asking him, you know, if he wanted to be involved with it, do you think this is worthy of a documentary? It's just so, you know, refreshing in one way to hear that there's interest from outside of our communities that this topic is important, because it's like, you know, we deal with it every single day, and you know, and it's very stressful to be put in these situations and feels very alone, or it can be very isolating. So I think to be able to like share this experience and all the humanity that you've talked about, and like the way that you're dealing with these huge issues, and like letting a camera crew into that, and, you know, showing how you're dealing with those, and being very real in your reactions to these situations and these big developments, you know, that happen in our story, is just, it's so exciting for me as a member of the community to like share that with the world, because I, you know, obviously I knew, you know, what I was getting myself into, and I'm just like, I love these people. I worked with them. Like we've grown together in many, many ways, I think, in my experience having worked for Mvskoke Media back in the day, back when it was the Mvskoke Nation News. So, you know, I knew you guys and how long you've been in this fight. And so I thought it was just super important for me, and really felt like a responsibility, you know, if I had this opportunity to share the journalist's story and to share your story with the world outside of, you know, Indian country even, and bring it to a wide general audience. There's been so much interest, and people are so like, you know, fascinated at how such a small group, you know, of journalists in this community and people in this community can make such a huge impact on, you know, our tribal government. And even having cameras in the room, I feel like there was an immediate impact of, you know, transparency and how, you know, that has affected, you know, legislation, and, you know, see some of those in our film. So, but yes, I'm just very excited and very thankful to both of you for it takes a lot of courage to like put your personal lives in the line, especially when you are journalists and you are used to having a very like scrubbed appearance in your writing and your broadcasts. Like that is your job to, be as unbiased as possible. So, opening yourselves up to, be vulnerable in, our story and on camera is just means the world to me. So I'm very appreciative.
Well, Mado for the support, and for the audience.
I would love to echo
ahead,
that.
Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
Before you jump into business mode, Jared, I just would love to echo that gratitude. I think for just you guys being so open on camera, not only from like a filmmaking point of view, but for the audience, because I think that it's really important. A really important aspect of the film is showing the audience the impossible situation that you guys were in. And without free press, you have to become an advocate. You can't stay unbiased. You have to fight for this thing to be able to just simply do your job. You have to fight for the bare bones minimum to be able to be unbiased.
Right.
And I think seeing that on screen is really important. Seeing the not composed version of that, seeing the frantic kind of like what is happening, it shows the audience. And I will say, both for Native citizens and non-Native citizens, I think, just to see like this is what happens when free press goes away, I think is really important for the audience.
Yeah,
that was going to be one of my next questions is like, is there any kind of weird kismet feeling about how this film has landed into Sundance and how the world is hungry for journalism stories and maybe even just stories for, human interest and human impact? Because it feels like this is a ripe time to have the story told. And I don't know about you guys, but as I was doing it and as things were happening, it felt like miracles were taking place in a way, because it was like, no way in the world will we ever get a ballot initiative. Holy smokes, there's a ballot initiative. So can you kind of talk about that journey that you guys were both on, like obstacles and how things came together? Because I'm just super curious from the production side.
Yeah, you mentioned kismet. I really think that is true. And just that there's such an interest in, obviously we cover some very important topics and, whether that's freedom of the press and then also elections fraud, like those types of things that are just so relevant to, what's happening in the broader like US media landscape as well. And so I think our documentary is just so timely and audiences are absolutely, hungry for that. Hungry for, great journalism, movies, but also like, I think one of the things that makes our, movie stand out is, it's just such a story of humanity, as I mentioned, and there's so much humor in it. And I think people have latched onto that. And I'm so excited. It was one of the things about being a director, that I really wanted to showcase, because again, I've been in the day-to-day in the newsroom and I know, how funny it can be, especially when you're like in the midst of covering elections. There are just funny moments and such stressful situations that you just have to inject humor into that. And so if I can, show that as a director and like just really highlight the humor in our story, that's definitely an important goal. But absolutely audiences have been responding, to that, and that humanity, I think, in our story is just like such an important component, and I think audiences are primed. And then you also have on the landscape, there's so many like great Native stories and series and movies that are coming out and are out right now. Obviously, like Res Dogs, 3 of my aunties like live on the same street where Res Dogs is filmed. So I think we're going to be in really, great company with, the other Indigenous like entertainment options that are out there right now. So we're just going to be hopefully just riding that wave of, great Indigenous stories. But that's something I also just like looking longer term. I really hope that our story inspires other Indigenous journalists to take their, what they're working on and the important stories in their community and, think about pursuing documentary as a, a visual form of storytelling where they may not have, thought about that as an option before. But I think they're just Indian country is ripe for, storytelling in this medium. And so I would love to be able to like help facilitate that in any way I could. So
Absolutely.
Just a personal note.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I got to touch a comment that was made in the chat real quick. Sooner Science Nerd, okay? If you look at our channel, you will see that the Mvskoke radio channel is also part of our thing. You can go there to listen to the radio show. If you can't hear it over the air, send me an email at jmoore@mvskokemedia.com, and we'll try to work out whatever the technical problem is with the radio station there, because we don't actually own the radio station that broadcasts us or anything, and there might be a problem with the board or something. Sorry about that, guys. I had to touch on that. And if you have a question, pop it in the chat. Let's try to keep it on bad press, though, guys. I got it says solving technical problems. For me, I did want to mention that the first time that I kind of saw the documentary crew you guys had come down was for when it was the chief election and the candidates were registering to run. And there was, like you kind of touched on it earlier, Becca, there was like a palpable, there's a documentary crew on the complex, stuff is going to happen, what's going to happen, it was great. So I think that apart from, like we were talking about the struggles of the press and what was happening with everything, it was also really cool for me to see that there was like an outside group of people that were coming in and observing things and watching how all of these personalities and people that I knew pretty well from covering them, how they reacted to that, what they were going to do, because I think the perception for a lot of the subjects and the people were like, this was Hollywood was coming in, and they were like, you're going to be in a movie, like a big movie, which it is a big movie. And like how they kind of reacted to that. I think some people on the council and things kind of got starstruck a little bit, So, and Joe, I wanted to ask you too, we're at 22 minutes, so we're getting close to the wrap-up time for the audience. If you have a question, you need to get in the chat. But what was one of the times where you went out and shot and you had, like, what was the most adverse time that you had? I know there are some times when it was like there had to have been situations that were either so funny or just, something happened that was so unpredictable. What are you going to take as your big memory from shooting this documentary?
Well, I think the most difficult one is actually what turned into maybe the most fun scene in the film, which the most difficult one was filming all of the candidates during the parade. Yeah. During the Creek Fest, because we had not brought on our cinematographer, this coyote, by the way, we had not brought on our cinematographer yet, and so it's very funny to hear that it was perceived as a Hollywood production, because it was so the complete polar opposite of that, just as poor as you could possibly be, and we hadn't brought on a cinematographer yet, and so I was filming. And so basically, like, I had to run around and like sprint around filming like 15 people or 10 people who were running for office. And that I think that whole shoot really broke me. I got out of that shoot and said, we have to bring on a camera person, because this is just insane. And I'm also not like a trained, this is kind of inside baseball, but I'm not a trained cinematographer. Right, and so I'm doing these interviews, and I'm winging it. I'm putting up a light. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not doing it right. All that stuff. And so it was very like, we need to get somebody in here who I think knows what they're doing, right?
Well, and to your credit, right? The final film, I think everything I've seen from it, it looks very, to me, indie film, or, you know what I mean? Like, it has the patina of a documentary. Like, at no point are you watching it going like, oh, this is like amateurish, or it doesn't look right. Like, it all came out in the wash, I think. So
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, credit to Ty, our cinematographer, for filming like extremely beautiful stuff. And then basically in the edit, we would sneak in my bad footage. So it'd be like a bunch of really great footage, and then there'd be that junk I shot, kind of edit. And you never know.
That's how I feel when I put a story together. Is I get to put the junk that I shot in there.
I don't remember which meeting it was, but there was like a time in it for me that was like immensely emotional. We had just come out of a meeting where we did not get the vote the way we thought it would go. And I remember standing out in the parking lot of the Mound Building with Joe, and he just looked at me and he said, "I don't know if this documentary is going to have a happy ending." And I was like, I was like on the borderline of tears, right? Like, and I was like, I don't either. And it looks pretty bad. And then I sat in my car for like a good 30, 40 minutes before I could even go home, because you don't want to bring that, to your house. You feel like raw, but luckily we know how that turned out. But tell us how people can see this documentary right now, or the soonest they can see it, and then tell us about your plans to bring it to the reservation, because there has to be some.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No. We can give you the link. We should have got this ready beforehand, but it will be. You can buy tickets right now for online screenings at Sundance, and so you can view it in a window between the 24th and the 30th of this month. We can provide that information for you. You'll have to sign up for a Sundance account and go in, and tickets are $20, and you can watch it for any time during that week. And then, yeah, Becca, I mean, as soon as we possibly can, it would be great to bring it home.
Absolutely. And I'm also just mentioning on the online screenings, so we will all four of us will be part of the Q&A on our premiere night, which will be January 22nd. Coming up very quickly. So those of you that are planning to tune in online and watch the film that way, you'll get to watch the recorded version of our Q&A too. So it's like you'll be there with us, and no matter where you're joining from. But yes, I definitely have plans to bring it back to Mvskoke Creek Nation to do community screenings as soon as possible. So it's so funny. We actually, Joe's taking a breath because we just got everything all finished yesterday. So now it's like, we get to like actually plan for what the, premiere is going to be like now that all the finishing touches are there. So again, we just absolutely could not have made this film without Joe. And I think we make such a great team. And I'm so grateful for his technical expertise, and joined with my story background and connection to, Mvskoke Media. It was just not have been possible to finish this film and share it with the world unless it was, for Joe. So I'm very thankful for him too. But yes, we will bring it as soon as possible. And then I'm also lining a screening up for the next Naja conference, which will be later this summer, August 10th. Through the 12th in Winnipeg. So look for it there as well.
It looks like Garrett popped into the chat, and I think Garrett's trying to link to Bad Press at Sundance there. I don't know if our chat is set up to take the links, but if you want to go to Bad Press at Sundance, the link is in the description of this live stream, so you could go click that and check it out there. We have not a lot of time left. So, Joe, is there going to be a trailer before the premiere? Will there be a trailer somewhere online that I could possibly share with anybody, or is it gonna just premiere?
We won't have a trailer, but we do have an exclusive clip coming out.
Okay.
And as soon as that, the location of that and the timing of that is set, I can absolutely share that with you guys.
Awesome.
And let you know.
Great. Perfect. So thanks for coming on today, guys. I really appreciate it. This documentary is kind of like, for me, like the icing on the cake of the whole saga of everything that has happened over these years. And I hope that we see more of this documentary in the future. I really hope that it kind of blows up and turns into even more free press for everybody, a spreading of free press, because there's a lot of dynamics at play here that you also see kind of like at the national level. But So I encourage everybody, like Joe was saying, you can go to Sundance's website and you can get those $20, $22 tickets to watch it online. Check it out online. If you're a Muskogee citizen, support it, because it also, we only got a little bit of time left, but I did want to mention, for me personally, I've seen some of the footage, right? And Mark Randolph in this, really is the most, maybe for me, the greatest portrayal of a Native American on the screen in the history of film. Honestly, it's really a real portrayal of what a modern Creek citizen is like, in the honest way and everything. I don't know how you would put it, but it really, I know there's all, as a journalist, I'm supposed to be like, oh, it's free press and everything. But when we saw that pieces of that cut, that's the part that I was like, whoa, man, this is blowing my mind as a film person, because I was like, you never see this. You never see these citizens like this on anywhere, much less the big screen. So I think that part is also going to really connect with people generally. And do you guys want to give a shout out to all the production crew right before we wrap?
Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness.
Go for it, Becca. Yeah.
Our fellow producers. So of course you mentioned Garrett, who's watching right now. So my husband and one of our fellow producers, and Joe mentioned Conrad Balhars, and also Ty Graham, who is our cinematographer and one of our producers. So everyone will be there. Mark, you mentioned Mark Randolph and Dodie Barnett will also be at the premiere in person. So we're very excited to have a great crew of Muskogee Creek representation in the house. So it's going to be a full packed theater. We're already sold out for our premiere.
Wow.
And so we're just so thrilled to be bringing this to the big screen finally and sharing this amazing story.
Awesome. And Angel, I know you had a production assistant with you. Do you want to give her a shout out?
I had a production assistant. Oh, my daughter, Evelyn Cantrell. This poor kid has been drug around for a couple of years through every interview, every boring thing you could ever imagine. And she gracefully let me do this kind of work. And I'm so excited to be taking her with me because she really is, when I look at the kids that were born during the filming of this documentary, and then my own children, that was really what pushed us through it, looking at them and trying to create that future for them. So, my production assistant, Evelyn Cantrell. Love you, babe.
Awesome. And I wanted to, before we wrap, I did want to mention that Cherokee Crayon asked a question and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. I don't know. We got 3 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Cherokee Crayon says, given that most of the filming was done pre-pandemic, has it been weird to see small things during the editing process that have changed in the last few years, like none flinching at a tackle hug?
Well,
I think it was mostly filmed in pandemic.
We filmed throughout 2019, and then in early 2020, obviously the pandemic hit, and so a significant chunk was filmed during the pandemic, and so, but it was definitely strange to see things kind of shift to masks and shift into that direction. And also made it very difficult to edit because just mask, no mask. Sometimes you're wearing a mask, sometimes you're not wearing a mask. It was just kind of crazy. But yeah, we filmed. I mean, we were filming as late as last September. So it's been quite a journey, and part of that took place over the pandemic.
Awesome. Well, we got it in there, Cherokee Crayon, and that's an interesting name. Well, again, thank you guys, and we're about to run. I got 2 minutes here, so and then for the audience, as Becca said, we're me, Angel, Becca, Joe, and who? I'm assuming is there going to be more production that's going to be on the Q&A, or is it just going to be us four?
Actually, I think it'll just be us four for.
Okay.
Premiere night, so there may be a combination throughout the week.
I got you.
It'll be us four.
So you'll see us again on that Q&A, and I am going to do a little video piece that's about this whole experience at Sundance and everything, and what is it like. So look forward to that on our YouTube channel. And with that being said, you guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you again later. Chihichath, Lees.
Okay, thank you, Jared, for sharing that. We'll let you know how we come out, how the film does in its competition at Sundance. Quick announcement here to remind you of the Veterans Benefit Concert, February 4th at River Casino. Mado Mabo Hedgetscut. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.